It was once said, believe nothing you hear and only half of what you see.
Get that stuff out of here! It's Southwest Bias!
It's Southwest Bias, brought to you by our friends at Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with hats and apparel from Branded Bills. Use the promo code PHNX to save 20% off your first order. And yeah, believe nothing that you hear and half of what you see. Seems like it probably should be the motto of everything on the internet right now. I received this tweet. It was sent to me by multiple friends over the last few days, right? And it's probably because I'm a 90s nerd with bad music taste that it was sent to me, and I love basketball. But the tweet's from Average Basketball Player, and it simply just says, did you know the Goo Goo Dolls were named after Tom Gugliotta, who finished 17th in MVP voting in 1997? Now, most of my friends took this at face value and thought it was quite interesting that the Goo Goo Dolls were named after Tom Gugliotta, the former son and obviously former Minnesota Timberwolf and Washington Bullet. But something didn't sit right with me because the timing didn't really make sense, because the Goo Goo Dolls have been around for years before Tom Gugliotta really became someone. And the Goo Goo Dolls had a different name before they were known as the Goo Goo Dolls and became famous, but I looked it up, and it's total BS. It's not true in any way, shape, or form. They actually chose their name while flipping through a True Detective magazine and saw an ad for something called a Goo Goo Doll and decided to just name their band that because it was ridiculous. Now, I know this is a stupid topic, and it's not really what we're talking about today on the episode, but it actually points out a larger problem. There are a lot of these tweets and Instagram posts and TikToks that are getting passed around about sports, and Arizona sports in particular, that are total crap. They take things out of context. They're not real. They say things that are pretty much asinine, all right? And look, I get it. It is an attention economy right now, and we are part of that as a media company. And, you know, sometimes we get close to that line, but you know what we try to do? We're never false on purpose, and we always include the source material in most cases so you can go check it out for yourself. And that's the problem. You got to look closely at these things. If not, you're like my friends walking around saying a 90s band was named after a 90s basketball player. Sure, it's nothing overly important, but you can kind of look stupid. And it's really started to bother me when it comes to Phoenix Suns news in particular, and we've seen it with Arizona Cardinals and Arizona Diamondbacks stuff. But the other day, Dwayne Rankin had a quote from an anonymous source, I believe it was a front office person around the NBA, saying that the Phoenix Suns could potentially get 4 first-round picks for Devin Booker. Well, this was aggregated by the typical people that do so, and all of a sudden it turned into the Phoenix Suns are trying to trade Devin Booker, even though they've stated via Gerald Bourguet's reporting that Devin Booker is going nowhere. But instead of people going and reading Dwayne Rankin's actual piece, they take this out of context quote and just assume it's the truth. And they run with it. And they start talking about it, and it takes on a life of its own. It's frustrating, not because I'm in this business, but because falsehoods get out there and nobody's checking it. It happened to Gerald Bourguet. I was talking with him earlier today about it. Everybody celebrated the NBA Centel account coming back after it vanished a handful of weeks ago, and people treated it like it was some great thing. But that's another account that toes the line between parody and confusing people. It prides itself on falsehoods that dupe people. And Gerald actually got pulled into one of these a handful of months ago. Actually, it was almost a year ago, a little over a year ago. They said, quote, I didn't run back because I didn't want to interrupt father and son playtime on their other end on Christmas. Chemezi Metu on not getting back on defense during the Dallas Mavericks Phoenix Suns game. And they sourced it via @Gerald Bourguet. Well, you know what happened after that? Gerald got so many messages about this. People assumed it was real, and it actually got back to Chimezie Metu. Gerald actually had to address this because somebody thinking they were funny put this out there and actually confused multiple people and an NBA player and put a reporter in a weird position. And this isn't even just pure aggregation. This is just simply attention grabbing because they get paid for the number of people that look at the tweet and share it and all that. But the aggregation of it too causes all sorts of problems because when you take things out of context, it creates a whole narrative that doesn't exist. It's happened to Gerald. It's happened to Wayne Rankin. It's happened to basically anybody that writes articles or has sources. And at some point, we got to stop. I know we can't stop the machine, but I'm sorry. Go to the actual source when somebody aggregates something. Make sure it's right. Because a lie travels a hell of a lot faster than the truth does, and the truth can't really catch up once it's out there. So do your homework, all right? Do your research. Everybody loves to say that phrase. Then actually do it. Because people like Gerald Bourguet and Dwayne Rankin are putting in a hell of a lot of work to try to get this right and get you information. But you know what happens when this stuff turns out to be aggregated and false? They pay the price because teams start to limit access and you, the fan, actually learn less. So why don't we take some time and get the information right? Understand it before you send that tweet to your friend and go, oh my God, can you believe this? Because in the end, you know what assuming does? It makes an ass out of you, me, and the guy that they claim that the sourced reporting was from. But maybe that's just my Southwest bias. Shane, what do you make of this? The mustache behind the Mac.
Oh my
Shane
God, I hate aggregation accounts. I hate it because being on this side of sports media, like you know what it takes to. I'm not going to say do reporting because I have a very, very short career of being a sports reporter. Yeah. But you know what it takes to be like an aggregation account. Like like if I wanted to be an aggregation account, I'm not saying I could do and build 100,000 followers. Like
these I could in a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah. It's no real work.
No, and don't call yourself an insider when you're parroting other people's stuff. Yeah. When you're literally just copying somebody else's homework.
Yeah, it's horrible. Because I get sent stuff all the time. Working in sports media, so many of your friends outside of work that's all they want to do. All they want to do is talk sports with you. And sometimes after work, you're just like, I don't want to. And so oftentimes I get sent this stuff and I do one quick Google, one quick text, one quick something. I'm like, brother, that's not even close to the truth. Dig a little deeper. Like the way people accept stuff as the truth so easily nowadays is horrifying.
Well, apparently Kyler Murray got traded like 3 times earlier in the week based on people with sources, which turn out to be total BS. You got to actually look at it. And I hate being the old man yells at clouds, right? I feel like that's where I'm at with this, but I'm really getting sick of having to fact check everybody on this stuff that's being sent to me. And I don't blame them. It's crazy to me. And the Goo Goo Dolls example was just a ridiculous one, but that one almost got me because it's obscure enough where you go, yeah, that could be true. And then, yeah, again, to your point, 2 Google searches and all of a sudden it's like, no, it's not. So just don't fall for things. I bring in next my special guest, Jeff Pearlman. He is a New York Times best-selling author, a guy that is very much the polar opposite of the aggregation world, and he's just launched a new podcast, and he's going to share one of the most unique things ever about Arizona sports. I got to tell you about the autonomous vehicles over at Waymo. It is unbelievable. You get in and it's just you, the car, and where you want to go. Unless you want to bring your family or friends. I mean, you might want to. I just like my alone time. But it's great if you're going out to a spring training game or going out for an evening on the weekends and want to have a drink or two and not have to drive. You've got an option here, and it's super easy, and Waymo is safe. All right, 150,000 trips per week in Los Angeles, Phoenix, and San Francisco. It's over 40 million miles of real-world driving, and I love telling you this part because it's so crazy and obscure to me. That can get you to the moon 80 times back and forth. That is nuts. That's how far they've driven these things. So download the Waymo One app today and start writing now. I had to tell you about my friends over at All Pro Shade Concepts. I have actually used them personally to fix a problem at my house. We got a giant sliding glass door and the sun beats in on it constantly and makes our kitchen warm, like really, really, really hot. And my wife and I have been trying to figure out how to find a solution for this. And when Max, our sales guy, said All Pro Shade Concepts wants to do something with us, I said, perfect, because I've been looking for something. They came out, they did a complete measurement and walked through the process with us, did unbelievable work, came out and installed it, no problems whatsoever. You're going to want to get a shade from All Pro Shade Concepts. They've been in the Valley for 20 years, and all you got to do is call 623-204-1476 or visit allproshadeconcepts.com to schedule your free estimate. Really excited to welcome a special guest to the program. He's the author of such books as Showtime, The Bad Guys Won, Football for a Buck, and The Last Folk Hero. And he has a new podcast, The Press Box Chronicles, that he just launched on YouTube the other day. It is Jeff Pearlman. Jeff, thanks for taking a few minutes with me.
Wait, important question. What is that hat you're wearing?
It is our logo. It's our PHNX. We call him Phoenix. So he's our logo with our friends. Branded Bills makes them for us. So we're big fans of the logo.
We've had in my world, there's a great debate going on about the rope hat. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that hat looks really cool. When I see the coaches on the sidelines of NFL games, it feels a little too deliberate. I don't know. Where do you land on that?
I agree. I agree. It feels deliberate on the sidelines. I like this one because it fits with the stitching on the other side and everything. So big fan of it. Cool. I know you're a big hat guy. You always are wearing multiple different hats in your TikToks. Right. Is it ironically not today, but is there a hat collection? Do you collect them on purpose? Is there some rhythm to what you do with your hats?
I've loved hats since I was a kid. And it used to be the thing my parents would bring me home from a trip, always a hat. And I like throwback. You know, I'm old now, so I like hats. I like anything that makes me feel like I did when I was 12. So, like, my favorite 3 hats at the moment are I have an old Houston Oilers hat that I like a lot. I have a throwback Tampa Bay Buccaneer cream skull hat. And then I have a Public Enemy hat with the Public Enemy logo that I bought years ago, forgot about, and have brought back into rotation. So those are my three.
Nice. I love it. So I want to talk about the podcast first. I want to take a look at what kind of led you to wanting to do this podcast. I know you got big on TikTok and kind of sharing your stories. Was that kind of the genesis of this?
Well, someone approached me, a place called 3.0 Labs that does sort of NIL deals for athletes, and they're trying to get more into the YouTube series / podcast space. And I don't know. TikTok has been crazy. I don't know how you feel about TikTok, but I never really cared about TikTok, was never on TikTok. Then a year ago, I tried it because some website, the defector, called me an old washed up sock who shouldn't be giving social media advice. And I was like, well, I'm going to try TikTok. And it's been one of the great career revivals of my life. Like, I actually love it. I love the storytelling of it. People actually like when you just tell stories. Like, it's kind of weird. There's this idea with TikTok, you need filters and you're lip syncing to a Taylor Swift song. And that definitely is a huge part of it. But there's this other part where people just like hearing stories. And I've really taken to it. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me, including this one studio that said, have you ever thought about doing just kind of a YouTube show / podcast? And I was like, well, that sounds kind of fun. And I don't know. You know what? I'm 52 years old. See a lot of people when they reach this point in their career where this is true, where you start feeling a little bit outdated and you start feeling a little bit irrelevant, and you're just trying to keep up in a way, but tastefully, not in some pathetic, outrageous way. And this feels like a tasteful, enjoyable, old school storytelling way to sort of stay in the game. So that's where I'm at.
Does it give you faith that people actually still want storytelling, still enjoy it, that it's not just hot take culture that's taken over, and something like what you're doing on TikTok and now with the podcast can resonate with, multiple age demos?
I mean, I hope so. It's weird because like on the same day I launched a podcast or the show, Skip Bayless launched. I didn't know this. It's weird coincidental timing. Launched his own sort of YouTube series, and his first guest was Stephen A. And I feel like in a way, I'm like the Funhouse 180 mirror of Stephen A. and Skip Bayless. Like they've stayed afloat, and in a way, they deserve credit because they're older than me, and they've stayed afloat, and they've stayed very relevant. And but like I feel like they've done it by yelling and screaming and barking and taking positions that they probably don't even believe in, and that's just not my thing, So hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, it works out, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. I'll keep writing books anyway.
Are books like kids that you maybe have a favorite, but you don't like to admit it?
No, I admit my favorites. Well, it's actually not a bad analogy because like I'll have people say this has happened a lot on TikTok actually weirdly. They'll be like, "Hey Jeff, I never heard of you before. Discovered you on TikTok. Which of your books would you recommend I read first?" And like, they all have their pluses and minuses. Some, I wrote a book about the 86 Mets or a book about the 90s Cowboys and those teams were just kind of wild and a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. Then you have a more stoic book like a Walter Payton book or I don't know. So, yeah, it's not like I love them all because they all beat the shit out of me. So it's more like I gave birth to them all and the birth pains still resonate with me. Like it's still like, oh, I remember that delivery. Like Jesus, that delivery was hard. And so yeah, they're all like kids, but they're all like kids who I really had to push out and my labor went far too long.
Showtime obviously was a book that wound up becoming the basis of the TV show Winning Time.
Mm.
Because that got optioned and actually made, does that hold a kind of a special or more special place in your heart when it comes to those books?
Okay, that's a really good question. The funny thing is, of the books I've written, I would not say Showtime was the most memorable writing experience. Now they're all memorable because they all take you places and the travel and interesting people, but like I would say the entire Winning Time experience was incredibly unique to me. And having a book turned into a TV series, like it really involved my whole family, which is really neat. And it was this whole process that we all went through together. But I wouldn't say that book, like to me, like the Walter Payton biography, just as an example, like it was really hard. He had died when I was writing it after his death, so it felt like a pretty heavy responsibility. I have a Tupac book I've been working on for the past 2 years. That's the same kind of thing where you feel like a little bit of a responsibility, and that probably carries more of a weight. And then I wrote a book about an old football league, the USFL. The book was called Football for a Buck, and that book was really special to me because everyone told me I shouldn't write it. It's never going to sell. Nobody's going to want it. My agent, literally, who I love, but said nobody wants a fucking USFL book, and like to see it to have it real. I mean, literally, I keep it near me on my bedside, weirdly, because I just every now and then I like picking it up because it's a reminder that you can pursue things that people say you shouldn't pursue. So
That's actually my favorite book of yours. I've read almost all of them, and Football for a Buck is one that resonates with me because growing up in Arizona, we didn't have pro football in terms of the NFL in the 80s. So the Wranglers and the Outlaws were kind of it. And in that book, you talk about one of the most interesting things in Arizona sports that I don't think people know, that they pretty much traded franchises at one point in this whole thing, and then merged with another. Can you kind of share a little bit about that? Because I don't think a lot of people out here have any idea this ever happened.
yeah, it's awesome. So the USFL was a spring football league in the early to mid 1980s, and it was always kind of unstable but really fun. And there was a team the first year, the Chicago Blitz, that was really successful. Their coach was George Allen. They had a lot of really good players, a lot of former NFL players. They took it very seriously. And there was a team in Arizona called the Arizona Wranglers that was terrible. They were not good. Well, the owner of the Chicago Blitz was Dr. Ted Dietrich, and he lived in Phoenix, either Phoenix or Tempe, or Scottsdale. And he lived in Arizona. And at the end of the season, he decides, I don't really like flying 4 hours to see my team play. I want my team in Arizona. And like the USFL always did this weird stuff for reasons I don't understand. So they decided they would trade the entire Chicago Blitz roster for the entire Arizona Wrangler roster. So the Blitz of Chicago all became the Arizona Wranglers. The Arizona Wranglers became the Blitz. The coaches, George Allen, coach of the Blitz, became coach of the Wranglers. They swapped franchises altogether. And the funny thing is, the new Chicago Blitz needed a new head coach. And they hired Marv Levy, who would go on to fame with the Buffalo Bills. And Marv Levy arrives, and he didn't realize that his roster was traded for another roster. So he's expecting to see like halfback Tim Spencer and wide receiver Trumaine Johnson, these great Chicago Blitz players, but they're gone in Arizona. And instead, he's coaching this crappy ass former Arizona Wrangler team. So that was weird. And then the next year, or the final season, the Arizona Wranglers and the Oklahoma Outlaws merge and become the Arizona Outlaws. And the funny thing about the whole football experiment in Arizona that I think of whenever it pops in my head is they didn't think about weather that much, right? They just overlooked weather. And they were playing in this stadium. They're playing in Sun Devil Stadium. And the bleachers were metal bleachers. Well, it's one thing to have metal bleachers in the fall, in the winter. This was in the summer. So people would just show up and burn their asses off on these 150-degree bleachers that they never considered would be maybe a problem in the spring, summer football. It's pretty funny.
Have you ever considered doing a follow-up about some of these other spring leagues, the AAF and the XFL and all that? Or was this just one-off, kind of your passion for that 80s league and spring football's in your past now?
I just love the USFL so much. I just loved it so much. I didn't have the same. It was right in my sweet spot of coming along when I was a kid, having a local team, the New Jersey Generals, having a guy, Herschel Walker, signed to the local team. I don't have that same sense of romance for the other leagues. So this is probably it for that.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have any other good Arizona-centric stories from your time with SI or any of the other books that you've written?
I mean, let me think for a minute. I did a lot of very early Diamondbacks, like a lot of early Diamondbacks. And the thing that I found fascinating, it's not a story per se, but like that I find really interesting, is like I was covering Buck Showalter as their manager, the first manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And those early teams were really actually good. The Diamondbacks took it very seriously. Showalter took it very seriously. But Showalter has always been to me the example, and I learned it from covering him in Arizona, the example of the manager who doesn't read the room well. And like players don't want to worry every single day that their socks are 6 inches away from the bottom of their pants. They don't want to worry every day if their locker isn't quite neat and that the deodorant isn't facing out. And they don't want to worry every day that we have to be there at 3. And if we're gonna be fine if we're there at 3:05. Like it's one thing if you're a kid coming up, but once you're Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling, Mark Grace, Tony Womack, like those age guys, you you realize that it's just garbage and you get tired of it. And he could have been a manager there for a long, long time, but he Joe Sargented himself out of there. And the other thing is I was covering the Diamondbacks Yankees World Series, and that was 2001. And I'm a New Yorker and I'm not sentimental, but number one, I vividly remember, and I'm as liberal as you can get, but I remember George Bush throwing out the first pitch of the World Series game in Yankee Stadium. I remember this vividly, sitting there, watching him walk out to the mound. It's actually really sad in hindsight. And he throws his perfect strike first pitch. And he walks out there and his chest was puffed out like he used to do that kind of fake cowboy thing, but it felt really good. And we would never be that united today. We just wouldn't. We would not be that united. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, we'd never be that united. And it was such an American moment, a profoundly American moment. And that happened before the Yankees and Diamondbacks playing in the World Series.
You think that is the best pitch ever done with a bulletproof jacket on?
Easily. And the story is well told, but he's practicing below Yankee Stadium before the game. And Jeter asked if he's going to throw on the rubber. And Bush is like, I wasn't planning on it. And Jeter basically says, they'll boo the hell out of you if you don't. So not only did he throw a perfect strike to, I think it was Jorge Posada, he did it on towing the rubber. So yeah, it was amazing. It was just a great, even if you hated Bush, right? It was a profound moment that, again, like Bush wasn't trying, but like, honestly, it was a moment that America needed to feel sort of united and emboldened. And it was pretty great.
Can I wrap this up with pitching you some book ideas?
Do you want me to give you yay or nay and why for your ideas?
Yeah, give me yay or nay if you
All
think
right.
that these are good. The
Okay.
first one actually about that
Are these for you or
2001.
for me?
Either way, I mean, you can steal them if you want. I know you've got plenty of ideas, but finishing up the Tupac book, you probably are looking for the next idea. So feel free to use them. The first one, the 2001 Diamondbacks that you were just talking about. Everyone wanted New York. How the 2001 Diamondbacks won with the world rooting against them. Good.
It's a regional book. I don't think the thing about books are generally sports books is you need a figure who's going to carry the narrative, who people care about, right? Like 86 Mets, Gooden, Strawberry, Carter, Hernandez, like kind of big figures, especially, and it was a New York team. 90s Cowboys had Emmett, Aikman, Irvin. Does Randy Johnson carry a narrative? I don't know. Does Schilling carry a narrative? I don't know. That's the biggest problem there. And it feels more like a regional book.
All right. Then you're going to hate a lot of these.
Okay.
So the next one, At the Line, the story of the 1980s Suns cocaine scandal. Not sure if you're aware of this, but players actually from the 86 or 87 Suns were arrested as part of a cocaine distribution scandal here in Arizona.
Was that William Bedford? Was he on that team?
Yeah, he was on that team. There was even Walter Davis, the Suns legend, got caught up in it. It was a pretty big scandal that almost cost the entire franchise. So
I feel like in order for that book to sell, it have to be written by like Michael Lewis or Stephen King, maybe, or someone. Like it's hard. It's a long time ago. It's a drug book. It might be hard. It's a cool topic. It'd be a great article.
Yeah. Next one. These get a little crazier as we go.
I'm here.
You're a New York guy, so you know this one. The book is Tupa: How a Punter Started 13 Games at Quarterback for the Phoenix Cardinals.
I'm in. Love it.
Going Bananas: the story of the Phoenix Suns gorilla. You think you'd be in on that one?
If there were, all right, I'm being serious about this. If there were insane stories about the Phoenix Sun gorilla, if he actually was a coke mule delivering like in his son, he kept his cocaine in his gloves and he was great. If it's just the journeys of a mascot, maybe not this time.
All right, I'll do some research and find out what the cocaine leverage was with the Suns gorilla. And then this one, Stubble: The Humble Beginnings of James Harden's Beard at Arizona State University.
I don't hate it. I'm here for it.
I don't think I'm getting any advances from book companies, but thought we'd run those by you. Jeff, anything else you want to share with us about the new show? Any teasers for upcoming episodes? I watched the Showtime one yesterday, which was the first one. Any hints what else we got coming up soon?
Well, I'm definitely doing a John Rocker episode, which is kind of fun. And it's going to be every week. And it's just me talking some, sports thing. And hopefully it'll work out. And people watch, called the Press Box Chronicles, and labor of love kind of thing.
Well, you can catch that on YouTube and where you get podcasts. It's the Press Box Chronicles. Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, and I cannot wait for the Football for a Buck version of the podcast. All right, we're ending the show. I know I went on a rant about hot takes and aggregation, but we got to fire up the hot take cannon. Shane is going to give me multiple topics, and I'm going to give you my ridiculous hot take on it, because why the hell not? Shane, what do you got for me today?
Water parks.
They are spectacular, and as long as you forget that people pee in those pools. If you don't think about that, water parks are fantastic. I love it. Loved it since I was a kid. Love water slides. And I love the fact that Sunsplash out in Mesa was actually used in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Like really close animal encounters, like a drive-through zoo.
Depends. If I have my daughter, I appreciate it because she likes it. But my fear always is this thing's going to attack my car, and then I'm going to have to explain that to my insurance company. And I don't really feel like going through, hey, a bear jumped on my car because I was dumb enough to pay $50 to drive through a bear enclosure.
Reality TV.
It depends again, but overall, I think it's the bane of our existence. It's destroying the fabric of America, and I love watching it.
Wow. Frozen yogurt.
It is in my tier of desserts, frozen wise. It's right under acai bowls, which if you look at me, acai bowls are probably pretty low. Give me real ice cream any day, anytime.
The tush push.
The tush push is freaking stupid, all right? If you need somebody to put their hands on your ass to get across the goal line, you aren't doing your job. And the fact that the Cardinals can't do it because Kyler Murray's too small is ridiculous. I hate the tush push. And one of the worst names in sports. Can we not find better branding for it if we're going to be stuck with this thing rather than the tush push? All right, it sounds like something a 90-year-old Jewish grandmother named, all right? Honey, you got the tush push, huh? I don't want to hear it anymore.
Matching outfits.
With who?
Doesn't matter.
It does matter, because if it's a daughter and a mother, it's cute. If it's, two best friends, it's kind of weird.
Me and my boys.
You and your boys would be ridiculous, which fits your branding. So it probably is good for you, but I wouldn't be caught dead dressed the same way as one of my friends unless it happened on accident. And then I'd go home and change.
Flavored water.
It's the only way I'll drink water, because regular water is trash.
What?
Regular water is awful. I hate regular water. It's bland. It's boring. It is basically the Christian Laettner of drinks.
Load management.
Another poorly named thing. I hate load management, all right? Because you're paid to play sports, not sit out and relax, all right? If you didn't want to work all the time, you should be in media.
Obscure Olympic sports.
Oh, all in. All in. It's my favorite kind of thing because I don't have to care about it every 4 years. I mean, it's perfect to get involved in something for like a week and a half and be really into it, like shot put. I was all in the Summer Olympics with shot put for no other reason than my daughter was like, "What the heck is this, Dad?" And I said, "I don't really know. Let's sit down and watch it." And then I was in on it for no good reason. I love obscure Olympic sports.
Anime.
Not my thing, but I don't judge you if it is.
That's all we got.
Should I have a hotter take on anime?
No.
The only thing I know about anime is the line in the Bare Naked Ladies song. Why don't
you sing it for everyone?
No, that will never happen on this program. I left my singing days with the Suns show, and I'm not doing it here. So at least not Bare Naked Ladies. Maybe you can find me something else. Another poorly named thing, because if you've ever seen the band Bare Naked Ladies, nobody that you'd want to see naked there, and no ladies anywhere near it. So... Is that all we got today,
That's
Shane?
all we got.
That's all we got. That is another edition of Southwest Bias. You can follow him on Twitter at Shane Deef. You can follow the show at PHNX_sports, and you can follow me at Espo. Until next Tuesday, ahoy hoy.
We all silly like the mayor.